Mic check. Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Getting a couple things set up. It was a late start for me. I had to run into the shop. Before we go into any of the analysis, any trading, as you guys know, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Everything in this video contains only my opinion and it's for entertainment purposes only. I'm just trying to give you guys some entertainment, take some trades. It's unorthodox trading style, and in terms of what I feel like I don't really see uh, my way of investing or my way of trading implemented too many other places, so maybe it's something different for you. But to start off for today, let's go right into it. We were playing the UFAB. We have a 44-cent stop in. Just not sure if it's going to be able to break over top of this, but 44 has been holding. Our fill is at 46 half, so slightly out of the money. Could have had some fills as it was trying to reclaim 50. Minute left in this candle. If we get stopped out, we get stopped out. It's really not the most size, but it's holding for now. So we'll just have this marked. Honestly, when I see these wick tops, it just tells me, hey, we're gonna trade down and go into the middle of this green candle. But if I'm lucky, this next candle can open up green and attempt. So clearly some selling pressure off that 50 flat. You can see the open candle gets as high as 50. A little bit of a wick top, washout top. Uh, Bait some of the longs in here for taking this breakout, which I was watching it when it was up here, and I said, okay, it showed me I can do this. If it comes back in, I'm going to try and get as good a risk reward as I possibly can. And with penny stocks, you got to be careful because your stop losses that you put in have to be by every penny. So when I took the trade, I was actually trying to get it slightly under 46, but I used my limit order at 47 to make sure I got the fill. Well, my fill comes in at 46 half. Uh, and I tell myself, hey, from 46 half, do I want to stop loss at 45 or do I want to stop loss at 44? So I decided to go with 44. If it gets under 44, I'm going to be out of this. Maybe if it tests up to these 50s again, maybe I can try and get some fills, start trimming the name down, and that allows me to maybe hold it down to these 44s, or maybe I can tighten the stop up, keep it a green trade if I wanted to. But I'm going to go through the title and then we'll come back. If it stops me out, it stops me out. I'm really not the most worried about it. So the second name we have on is AI. I'm playing this 35 or 39.50 range, and it looks like it's doing pretty good. So I've seen this first candle start wicking into, these previous lows. Let's just mark 39.50. You see it's wicking into these previous lows. So as it's pulling back, I want to get as close to fills to the top of this body candle as possible. So I'm going to mark the top of this body candle. So I already know I'm trying to play this 39.50 level. So you can see it's wicking. So as it's pulling back in on these, especially off the top of these wicks, I wasn't on a 5-minute, but as I see the price coming in, we have 40s, we have, let's just go look at the prints, my bad. We have, my first initial fill was a 39.46. 39.32 and a 39.22 was my best fill. I'm guessing that came in the middle of this wick. So as it was pulling closer and closer down into this 39 level that we like, I'm trying it because I'm telling myself, hey, my out is probably going to be if it gets underneath the body of this candle. So I'm telling myself I'm giving 10 pennies under 39, and if I'm lucky enough, it can break over top of these lows and even these highs. Well, it's wicking into it right now, so it still has to deal with some pressure. But if I pull this 39.50 just flat across, maybe I just go and put a horizontal line on this. Let's just go right off at 39.50, and we're going to see why I think this is an important level. You can see we try to push up there, and when we push it, we're seeing wicks on top of 39 half. So looking across this, you can see all kinds of action around this 39 half. So I'm telling myself that, hey, if I'm lucky enough to get some fills just underneath that, maybe I can be fortunate enough to catch a bid to the upside. Well, right back in the 39 half. So same could be said the other way, where maybe a short is looking for this. You see these wicks up here. Is there someone trying to punch in short for the breakdown and retrace back to the gap? So we gap up, and it doesn't fill this gap. So you're going to have people that are thinking, hey, if I can get an entry on a short, I can be fortunate enough to get this back down to 39, 38 and a quarter. So realistically, my out for the name is going to be underneath of the body of the candle. Call it a 39. If it gives up 39 today, we're going to be out. So give or take, based off of my entries, we're looking at about 30 cents of risk. Going back over the UFAB, right in around this initial entry, I'm not looking to average into it, and I'm not looking to average up on it either. Uh, Honestly, looking at the tickers, I looked at the Roku. I seen that it was gapping up to that in the after hours. It was fighting around 72 to 74, but I had this flat top. I seen this flat top, and I said, if it were to test up around this, I might play around with it. So I don't know if I would have had the guts to pull the trigger right at that, but this was one that I really wanted to play early in the morning. Just wasn't here at the time, so it is what it is. UFAB, a couple pennies in the money now. What's the other title name? We have XELA. Just a continuation play. We got stopped out of a couple yesterday, but this is still holding this trend line. And from our entry, our best fill on the name is actually 485, and we just got done trying to trim 650 yesterday. I actually didn't check to see if I got that fill. It looks like 48 is the high, so I didn't get that fill. But we did have some fills up in those 30s. I think the best fill I had was a 639. So not a half bad little trade that this has been. Over $1 in the money for a $5 cost average, give or take. I was looking at BJDX, and honestly, if this were to kind of hold this range right here, I'd say this is where your risk reward is pretty decent. Maybe you can run some stops underneath this 725 break. Uh, give it to like 715 to give it so as close as you can get it to 725. Maybe this needs a little bit more time to consolidate. But we're going to go over to this UFAB, and now I'm going to actually go pull this up on the tape. Did I have another one? Oh, yes, of course, T-Row. Haven't got a chance to look through the earnings report, but T-Row, we did go on the bid or the ask at 134. And we took a market fill right when we got home around 131.20, somewhere in there. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to look through the earnings report, but EPS wise, I'd say that covers the dividend and then some, about a 60% payout ratio. But I did want to get some fills while I was up here, just because I'd say this is kind of some resistance, and this is one that we've kind of been playing as close to 100 as we could. We even took some positive breaks. You see a positive break here as it's taking out these necklines. I call this the nut up or shut up. When you see a candle like this, it's like, okay, you're breaking over this neckline, you're breaking over these lows. Do you want to risk it ripping, or are you okay buying some here, and then if it comes back in, you're okay holding it? So for me, this was a company that I was okay holding. So that is T-Row. Honestly, I would expect this very strong name to catch some continuation. Does it need to pull back first? I don't know. So I just took, honestly, this is the first sells that I've had on the name. So take that for what it's worth. I'm not saying go out there, punch in market. I wouldn't look at this as more of a day trade style. I'd look at this as maybe an opportunity to try and punch long, but play support levels. This right here, I would say, is resistance. And one main reason is if you go back over to February and March of 22, this is your previous lows. You give up those lows, you back test it, you reject, reject. So this is kind of the area when I'm buying down here, I'm already identifying that, hey, if we get up to this range, this is going to be a profit take area for me. And if I'm lucky enough to catch a bid further to the north side, then we'll take it. So I will be a little excited to go look through that earnings report. Just don't have the time right now. UFAB right back into, keeps wicking up into there, so probably did miss my profit take opportunity. That's all right. We're going to try and respect the stop. If it gets underneath the low of this candle, I feel pretty good that 44 is probably a good stop, and that we're probably going to see some sort of descending channel start to take place, give or take. Do you see some buying pressure coming at 43? Catch a bid, maybe tries to get back up. Well, then shorts start taking control at some point. It does have good green volume, but there's a lot of selling pressure right there. So how much of this green candle is selling pressure? You always got to take that into consideration. And we're continuing to reject that 50 level as well. So all in all, that is what we got going for today. Let's go take a look back at that AI. wicks in towards those 39. So, is this going to be an opportunity to add more to this position, or do we need to think about maybe setting a stop loss in for the position? Looking around, the biggest hurt for me this week is probably going to be this ATHM. This was one of my top plays that I wanted to take place with on. Found it over the weekend. Had a nice trend line that I was just given this sideways consolidation. And for whatever reason, when the Chinese ADRs started going, we didn't take this neckline break. I call this a nut up or shut up. And from this point on, in my opinion, you're getting the positive break, you're getting a neckline break, you're getting a trend line hold. You by not taking this fill right here, you're risking getting this move to the upside where we're actually breaking over this 32. It's set to close underneath that, doesn't even fill the gap at 31, gets damn close. Buyers continuing to buy this up. I haven't looked at the earnings report. But now you get the gap up continuation. Some of these Chinese ADRs are really strong right now. Baba had a 100 break today. Tencent I seen was, Baba even kind of breaking this channel. It was you're looking at the fourth point of contact right here. It's like, okay, do we get rejected and have to come retrace all the way to the bottom end of this channel? Maybe retest of this neckline, maybe a gap fill down here at 84, 83. But then you look at the strength. You have this false positive break right here that starts sort of this ascending channel. You have this confirmed low that meets a nice parallel channel. You get a nice gap up off of that trend line that starts it, and you reclaim that positive. And now you get in this overbought area. It's like you push up, respect the top end of the channel, build a nice little U shape, bull flag consolidation. Now we're getting a gap up continuation. I can also see that we did fill the 99 gap. That's right over 100. Didn't even respect it whatsoever. Just blasted right through it. Where I'd say a truer neckline is probably this 104, but the top of this is at 105. So if this gets over 105, I would expect continuation up to this 118. And if it got that, that's testing up towards previous resistance. You can see all this resistance up here, where I'd say this is probably a profit take area for Baba. So if you're looking at this as early signs of a trend break, it's trading in this channel. Don't have 3 points of contact to the downside, but maybe this is the start of something that's going to be a bigger move. So some of the Chinese ADRs definitely have been strong. We can go take a look at Tencent if we wanted to. I'm sure that's up big as well. But how about we just go take a look at iShares China large cap ETFs. You can see a nice gap up over top of this flat top was a pretty good look to start the day. But then testing over towards this, you have a gap fill that wasn't filled. Is it going to push for these 30s? After that, you can see the trend. If this is building a U shape, makes a run, pulls a retracement, this is right to a gap fill as well. You can see this gap right here filled on the money. And if we're looking at that as some sort of retracement play, you can see it pulls right into the 618, builds this sort of inverse head and shoulders look. You pull down to the half, and then you try to hold the half a little bit below it. But all in all, I'd call this some sort of inverse head and shoulder. So, does it respect these highs, have to pull back in? I'd say if this pulled back in to 28 half, I think there's going to be some good buying pressure there where you're going to have people there looking for this to push up to the highs of this retracement. And from there, that could be all in all, if you're mapping this out like a channel, all in all, it could be building something like this. An ascending channel where this actually pulls over to a previous sort of trend line as well. Not a perfectly set channel, but obviously we need more information to understand how this is actually going to play out. Looking at UFAB, still trying to hold in around these 46s, so that we should be approaching this next candle here very soon. Still a little wick of buying, so not really giving up the ghost all in all yet, but oh, Mr. Drift, how we doing today? Happy Friday, Rudy. I'm good. I'm good. I was a little upset that I had to take care of some stuff this morning. I was hustling back. My drive was about 20 minutes. So I had to wake up early, drive out, get some work done, drive back, and got back around 8:48, 8:50, give or take. and then had to identify everything. Uh, we were thinking about, so when I get back, this is in the middle of this candle. I was thinking about this. Was it going to be a continuation? But as I gave that candle more time and seeing that, hey, we're giving a larger increase in red volume, and somebody just said, hey, this should easily pull back and test more into the middle of this green candle. Let's give it some time. Where this UFAB, now I'm watching this candle. This one's leaving a wick, and as I keep watching it from House Stream, this is getting closer to that 50 break. When I seen this, and when it pulled back in, I just said, hey, we got to at least give it a try. My risk reward right here is pretty decent. If it gives up these levels and starts coming back in, we could see this come back in into the 30s possibly. But yeah, no fills on the name. We're in at 46 half. So I mean, I'm giving it 2.5 pennies. Not the most amount of size, but if this were to break out, when I go to the daily chart, you can see this is sort of that flat top resistance where if I can get this breakout, and you're also fighting with these lows right here. You see these lows? So my thesis is that if it can hold above this range and sort of break out, I wouldn't be surprised to see something crazy happen where this could rip up maybe up into 80 cents or the top of these wicks. So that's what we're looking for, but clearly somebody wants to sell it at that $half mark, which is pretty typical. You see that normally on these penny stocks, and I keep telling myself I'm done trading these penny stocks, but sometimes I just can't help it. I can't help it. I hate how I have to run the whole penny stops. You know, uh, I haven't actually seen any price movement in this at all. Did this rip up to 50 and then halt down? I actually better go take a look at that. Because if this is halted right now to the downside, it is halted, and it looks like to the downside. I don't know what the tap is at, but it looks like I'm probably going to get stopped out as soon as this opens, which is unfortunate. I'm surprised that it's halted. Maybe there's news correlated with it. Let's go take a look and see if I can find any news related with it. UFAB, unique fabrication. Comments on trading activity. A leader in engineering, manufacturing, rubber, plastics. The company has no news to announce at this time, but would account for a recent increase of its shares. And that was 15 minutes ago, so I don't so I wish they had some news. But let's see if we end up getting stopped out here. I don't know when it's supposed to open, but hopefully it doesn't freaking come all the ways back into 25. Baba pulling back to that 100. We should go take a look back at AI. AI got as low as these 38, so now that it showed me this, I think we're just going to go right underneath of that. If this gives up, we'll say 38.85. We're going to give this one up. And looks like that is probably going to be a stop out as well. We'll see if those 85s can hold, but doesn't look the greatest. We'll see. Maybe it can hold something up there. Let's look around though. T-Row giving up the 130s, but still has a chance to try and come in, set a higher low. If it pulls back in, shows you something, you can get an early start of maybe a start to an ascending channel, possibly. Looking around some more. Affirm, that one is a tough one. At some point in time, you gotta lay the groundwork and have an out. And we had a catalyst that, hey, we think this is some sort of ascending channel, and when we are breaking below these lows, we gotta have an out somewhere. So, I I was actually at work when I put the stop in when it was right around 17. We said, hey, if this can hold, we're gonna go with it. Lucid is one that we have still been able to hold, but same story. We had a trend line, we had a catalyst. Actually, I haven't looked at it today. I seen it gapped up. I wasn't worried about it, but we actually had 680 stops underneath this wick low right here. But 680 also runs in over here. So for all I know, this could have wicked down, wicked me out, held 75s and curled back up. But luckily for me, it was able to hold. So maybe I could keep Lucid up there for one of the title names. But all in all, uh, continues the hold trade sideways. So more than likely, I'm going to stick true with my out. If this were to curl down and give up the ghost to the downside, I think I'm going to be out. If it wants to hold this range, we think that we can print this name at least up to this 8-11 gap. Or that's where I'm looking for my first profit takes or first like true outs. But if it were to catch a bid, we got this gap up here near 10 that we're going to have our eyes on. I know Hal was talking about Sega. I had to add that one to the watch list today. Let's go take a look at the 15-minute chart for Sega. Gaps up, gives up the ghost. So if you're playing this middle consolidation, once you see that wick, more than likely you're putting stops, and that's right at a 625. So if you're playing above that 625, more than likely you're out to around 620. As soon as 620 gives up, boom, you get this red engulfing candle back down to the level. Looks like maybe a little bit of support, I'm sure, in this sideways consolidation here, but tough to say. Probably going to be one that I stay away from when I see it give up the ghost on this first candle. More than likely, I'm going to stay away from it. That doesn't mean that it can't catch a bid and push back up. It just means it has more levels that it's going to need to work through. That's the way that I look at it, at least. Yeah, another Chinese name, JD, kind of the same look, breaking over top of these highs right here, actually gaps up and continues. Now flirting over here with this resistance. We pull up a daily chart here. You can see a nice confirmed higher low, and off this higher low, you see it bounce one more time for another higher low, gaps up, makes a run. Here's your nut up or shut up. Little play right here, and I'm going to show you why. There's your positive break. You gap up, nut up or shut up. You got a market order in or risk it ripping up higher, or you can wait for the pullback in for the gap. If you're patient, you got this pullback in. You got the buyers on this day, and it ends up wicking all the ways through down to 35.50 and set to close right at that gap. Well, now getting that continuation, filling this gap today and not slowing up. So if it's able to get over top of this 40 or 40.70, is this going to be the start of a longer sort of trend where Baba has this sort of channel look right here where top end of the channel is up near middle 40s. So really not a half bad look. UFAB, I have no clue what's going on with this. I'm actually a little worried that this is going to gap down through this whole candle. Hopefully that isn't the case. But sometimes these halts, they just want to scare you a little bit and they just open flat. So I don't know what the tap is. I don't have that sort of access. I know anybody who was here yesterday knew I was playing Tilray. We actually exited Tilray when we went to work yesterday. We seen this red candle come in and we said, I believe our out was 219. We said, hey, let's just get out of this. So we're not even in Tilray right now. We can see uh, this is what I'd call sort of a double top catalyst. When you have a high from the previous day, sells off, and then it retests to a lower high, and now we're getting a truer wick, and we have a downtrend also set right here. So let's see what this is looking like. If you look at this back from when it was trading up near the highs in 2021 up at $32, is downtrend has been respected pretty well. So does this need to pull back in? If it pulled back into like 180s, maybe even to the gap, maybe even the top of the wicks right here, this is what I'd be looking for, a pullback. Where I'm sure you also have some sort of trend line built in there. So if it pulled all the ways back in aggressively, you have your positive break. So as it's pulling back into these levels, maybe there is something that's brewing there, but maybe there isn't. Tough to say. UFAB is open again. So now, or at least I've seen the price move. The chart hasn't updated yet, but opening above 44, so now I'm pretty confident that, if that stop does trigger, it's going to be a clean 44 print, which is all I want. I'm okay losing the 2.5 pennies on something that's uh, low risk, high reward, in my opinion. And why I say it's low risk is because, well, obviously a potential halt down below my stop is not low risk by any means. But we feel the 2.5 pennies is reasonable for the size that we have on the position. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you guys are always welcome to ask, drop questions, comments, whatever the case may be, and I'm willing to share my opinion on it. Of course, it's always an opinion. Baba still holding 100. Nicola, we didn't even think about putting a stop in for Nicola, but we do have this sort of flag pattern where it's holding this level. Uh, does it break this downtrend? If this can break this downtrend, I think that we can see this print up near the highs again, maybe even up to 4. But if it breaks down, honestly, this could easily pull all the ways back into my original 150 break on the name. This is why, to me, it's a lot more important to get that entry. On this day, this could have easily gapped up over this 150. When I was trying this 150, I wasn't sure it was going to do this. Obviously, you never know when it's going to do this, but sometimes taking the risk where I was playing the 150s here, and I'm probably saying, hey, I can give this 5-6 pennies back in through the level. If it pulls back in the 140s, maybe I even run a deep stop below. So that's 16 pennies of risk. Maybe I wouldn't use that much risk, but all in all, that's kind of what I was looking at the time when I did that. $46.29. Is this halted again? UFAB. What the heck is going on? It's halted again. I have no clue what's going on with this. And there is a stop out. It goes to 42s. Let's see what that print comes in at. It gives us 41. So 41 out. You know, that's such a weird occurrence right there. But we get stopped out for a 5.5 penny loss. That equals a little bit more loss that we have, but that's the risk of playing with the stock. Honestly, I'm not even sure how it halted. It must have been a news halt, but I guess that does equal to 10% from the top of the wick, so maybe a straight down move. Tough. Hopefully this level can hold. Maybe there's something there if that can hold. But yeah, gonna move on from that. And let's go take a look back at AI and see if we were able to hold. And looks like AI also a stop out. So not the best start to this morning. I guess I could also have the Intel on there. Intel, I mean, this says the story of it. Gaps up through this downtrend, playing the top end of this range. Haven't had any refill or reloads on the position, but if it's something that wanted to build this sort of U-shape and break over the highs right here, I'm sure you have some sort of ascending channel. Maybe that gap down day shows you the trend line, gaps through the trend line, buyers buy it on top of the trend line. So if this was some sort of channel right here, you can see top end of the channel meeting up around those 40s where we have this gap fill up at 39.75, give or take. Looking around, Zim was a name that we sort of been trimming, and what we have stated is that if we can get close to this 16, we're looking at that as where it flat bottom broke, and if it can retest up towards that 16, that's where we're going to be on the ask, give or take in that range. Lucid continuation, just a slow churn on the name, nothing crazy. Got as high as 25s on this candle. Oh boy, my headset's low. XELA still holding the trend line. Maybe if this were to give up the trend line, this as many trims as we've had on the name, maybe this is one that we can wait for a retest of this 570 range. Maybe there is a more distinguished trend line built in right here. If this were to trade in near this, 550 to 570, maybe we can think about reloads on the name. Baba giving up 100, understandably, but still a lot of green volume. There's three candles right here with totaling about, there's 611, 617, and 509. Pullback candle does decrease. We have a minute 30 left. Little wick of buying coming in the top of the second candle. I'd say that looks probably pretty decent for some type of continuation. eBay is a new one that we're watching. I actually like the earnings report. It gapped down 12%. But if we're looking at fundamentals for a company, high margin, consistent, not a fast grower, but also coming into sort of this trend line as well. So I'm actually looking for this trend line to give up, where I think a more long-term picture for the name. It's not a perfect channel, but definitely has some sort of trend line built in right here. Whether this is accurate or not, is it going to be able to hold something like that? It's not a clean channel, so I really don't like having it there. But if this pulled into like 40s, lower 40s, and even into the 39s, I am probably going to be punching long. And if it goes any lower, if it got into the middle 35s or even down into the 20s for some reason, we will be punching long on eBay. Not a flashy name by any means, but I think a respectable long based off the financials. Since 2013, I believe they bought back 60% of their total shares outstanding, something like that. Uh, so for a company that's high margin, operates consistently around 20s to 25s, and is buying back shares hand over fist, smaller dividend but reasonable payout ratio. That is what we're trying to find in terms of long-term positions. Plug is another name that we've said, hey, if we get near this middle ground in strength again, and 1150 gap is really what I've been, our 1118, 1120 gap is really what I've been looking for. So if this is able to pull down here, this is where we're going to be looking for reloads on the name. And if it pulls down any lower, we're going to be trying this trend line. And if it goes lower than that, then I'm going to have an out for the stock. But this has been a name that we printed on very well to the high side. Had a lot of fun playing around with that position. But down near those 11 flat to 1050 is where we're going to be looking to reload the position and get some of that size back on the name. But you can also see the catalyst for the ascending channel. So already showing some of these price actions in towards this previous high right here, and a little bit of buying but not the most. But does fill this first gap right here at 1150, catches a small bid. You would have had some opportunities for trims. Okay, so now if it gets under here, are we going to have the same buyers coming in off of 1120? It's going to be tough to say, of course, like anything, but I will be, because I'm in a situation where I've taken a really good order or position, ran it up to the high side over $3 in the money, and for me to take $3 in the money to reload it off of a nice gap and a trend line, I think it's a something that after doing something like that, you have a lot more comfort adding back into it. Looking around, here was 10 cent. So 10 cent, I really haven't adjusted much. I haven't got around to everything, but this has had a clean descending channel that's now gapping over. So like I said, these Chinese ADRs are on one right now. And each one of them that I've pulled up is showing you signs of that breakout level. You got a flat top here on ATHM. You have Baba flirting with the 100, breaking on top of a channel. You have JD that's showing you a breakouts of a neckline, filling a gap and holding above the gap with a clean look for a start of an ascending channel. Where this actually probably has some sort of downtrend right here, give or take something like this. A fairly parallel channel. You have some false breaks to the downside, but just looking where this wick came in, testing this flat top, where it breaks it, retest, 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 and then this is actually the price that holds the start of this ascending channel. And there's a lot of good positives that we're talking about right there. Uh, of course, you have, Neo has been going on a tear as well. Had an ascending channel that we weren't able to play, breaking over top of that ascending channel, and now actually breaking this probably not so perfect trend or channel to the downside. Roku, nothing but continuation to the upside. Siga trying to hold the level. Let's go search by volume here. Tap that 618 on the money. Let's see what this weekly candle looks like. That wick top is scary. Gives you the idea that, hey, let's go get a third point of contact on this. So that's low 20s, and then you risk gap down through the trend line. End phase. You guys have heard me talk about end phase I don't know how many times. Giving you the earnings report. Honestly, I thought the earnings were good. I looked at them last night. The forward guidance for the Q3 was nothing but bad news, and I can think of 1,000 different ways that you could take that guidance as bad news. But all in all, I do think this is a reasonable long-term buy. Where under these 150s, I think you're buying a fast-growing company that has solid cash on hand that represents the debt. It's bringing in a decent amount of free cash flow in a space that is looked likely to continue growing in that solar space. And I mean, if you haven't looked in the end phase, I would say go take a look at that company and what they actually do, the product. And I would say for this to pull back as strong as some of the names have been in 2023, obviously this was strong in 22 when market was very weak, and now kind of vice versa. I there's no true perfect way to set this channel, but if it's still trading in this channel and we calculate this as the start of something, yes, it's going to have to fight through these lows that it's putting in right here. But all in all, there's still a catalyst that this is still trading in the channel. Even though I had it originally, the channel set like this, where we're putting a red engulfing candle through it, for all I know, I don't have this channel set correctly. Uh, all in all, it's a company that I like punching long. We've been buying this a little bit in these areas of support at 160, and if you look at the daily chart, the strength just hasn't been there. We also played this positive break. We also thought that, hey, we think that there's good reason to believe that we can retrace up to this 220. And looking at strength, you can see the positive break on the name. after holding a confirmed higher level. Well, the earnings gives you the gap down below this trend line. Is that how it's supposed to be set? It's tough to say. But with it doing this right here, I'd say it is still possible that we're trading inside of this long-term channel. But you can see they have adjusted the forward guidance for the company where year over year, year over year numbers were great, 34% I believe it was. But then you look at this, we're looking at a lot smaller growth right in there. Is that going to be something that continues moving forward? It's tough to say. It's always tough to say. If you knew what the numbers were going to be ahead of time, obviously you could trade accordingly. But I'm not worried about the shares that I have. I feel where I started my position in the long run, those are going to be good shares bought. I'll look back and say I'm glad I didn't sell it right here. Even if it were to come all the ways back into, let's say, 120, I'd say that's reasonable support. That's near your tops right here. Your lows, 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 lows. So pull down into the low 120s, I would say I'm going to be punching long. And I'll be thinking a lot more bullish, probably more size building onto the position. Am I going to play this like, oh, I had my trend line set wrong. This is how it's supposed to be. Now I'm punching everything. No, on a big gap down after earnings, I'm just going to let it breathe. If it retraces back up and gets over 160s, maybe there's a time that I can think about averaging more shares in. But if I'm lucky enough, while I have this position with not so much size, if this price were to give up this trend line, this gives me a clear buying opportunity to average more size into a fundamentally sound company, in my opinion. Lucid, still fighting over 7. As long as Lucid's over 7, I don't see a reason to ever really panic about this position. There's always going to be liquidity on the book for this name. Disney, we've been playing around with Disney a little bit. I'm not going to be buying any more shares off this support level. If I did, I would go off of this 84.10, 84 gap, we'll call it. But earnings are coming up. I look forward to looking through their earnings report. But I do think this is a reasonable support level to punch long. And if you're lucky, we have 76 marked, which is the high back test. A couple wicks down towards this level. If it were to get into these middle 75s, that's probably my next target range. You always got to be careful when you give up support. And I would say if it got underneath of 84, that 84 gap, that is a support break. And I'm not going to be trying to buy this knife if because it could easily put some red engulfing candles down in the 70s. If I'm lucky enough to get this in the 70s, that's where I'm going to be punching long. If it gets under 70, I mean, I don't see Disney going away anytime over the next 20 years. So if you think that buying shares at 70 with the catalyst that it can go lower, but over the next 20 years, what is this stock going to be able to do? Obviously you don't know, but uh, that is the continuation talk with Disney. But still just kind of an inside day, a lot more strength out there. So by no means am I saying that this is the best buy that you can find out there. But I will say it is at support. And while it's at support, it's worth bringing up. I was hoping that we'd see some more continued downside on airlines. You can see kind of the catalyst that we have here with Delta, which was a wonderful position that we played. I think we have a 33 90 average. So we were playing this name even before we started ripping. Had some good outs, reloaded this sort of trend line. You can see the catalyst for a longer term trend line as well. But now that it's sort of broke over top of this channel, we had some good outs and we were on the ask at these tops over here, which meets in with a couple lows. Just never showed that continuation, but I want to see this get back inside this channel as close as I can get it to 40. That is the middle of this green move. You can see that 40 half meeting up, the half meeting up right around 40.50. If this pulls into that area, I'm not going to hesitate regardless of what the chart. If it gapped into that level, I would buy it at the open with no questions asked. That doesn't mean that you should. I'm in a different scenario. I got an average of 34. So the it to me it's get the entry, trim the levels to the upside, which is what we did. If it pulls back, looking through the earnings reports for a lot of airlines companies, you're talking about putting up 270 EPS, a projected 240 for the next quarter. Uh, if they put up $10 a EPS every year, it'd be 4.5 years at $45 to pay off the entire stock price in EPS. So if they can continue, and obviously maybe the second quarter or maybe the third quarter is a bigger quarter for them, but all in all, uh, if we're looking 5 years in advance and they can put up $2.50 in Q2 and Q3 of next year, it's like, yeah, it's a no-brainer that it's probably a decent buy. But also, if you weren't looking at an individual airlines company, you could just go with the Jets ETF, where it's pretty much got your same chart set up, but you get more diversity. So if you weren't confident in picking a individual airlines company, I'd say you have a reasonable ascending channel right here that's trading in. And it's actually a cleaner channel than the DAL. So if this pulled back in, if you started in this sort of support right here around 20 flat, I'd say your average in area is going to be around this 1850 or playing this trend line. So if you get some red engulfing candles to the downside, I wouldn't say it's something that I'd worry about. Uh, for all I know, this move isn't over, and we get a push up into the middle 20s, which from current price, let's say you're late to the game and you said, "Hey, I want some skin in the game," I'd still say you got about 15% movement to the upside for the top end of this channel. But a lot of airline earnings I thought looked really good. That's my personal opinion. That doesn't mean that they're gonna uh, miss horribly in the coming quarters. I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball. But I do like their earnings report, and the chart setups also kind of justify that as well. UFAB wicking down in, gaps in, stops us out. Now pushing, attempting. How much orders are going to be off of that 46 gap down? That's what I'd be worried about. So if you had orders in off of these lows right here, I'd say profit take. And if you're lucky enough to get back over 46, then hold a piece for that 50 break. But I would definitely respect up to 46. Intel, we actually didn't look through the Intel earnings. We didn't have time last night. I looked through the end phase. I looked through Allison. Allison has yet to disappoint me on an earnings report as long as I've been looking at the stock. But I mean, that tells you the story right there. But Lord, please let this pull back into like 50. Let it pull back into 50. I would be lovely if it did so. Fastenal, keeping an eye on Fastenal. I felt I had a reasonable chart set up going on Fastenal. And anytime I see this, I instantly think, hey, probably some sort of descending channel through this. Getting a gap up to the top end of that channel, giving you a nice push. Bullfly look, and now trying to attempt to take out the highs at 58.5. This is one of those names that we also average up in playing this like a flat top at 55. So had some good outs. If it pulls back into 55, I'm a buyer. Or even 56, I'd probably be a buyer. Simply because you have a nice trend line. These are your previous highs. If you pulled back in and set some hold of support at 56.5, I don't see why this couldn't curl up. But where it's also at is that trend line is probably going to be your out because you're rejecting the last retracement. So if this is a wave pattern and you see a crack of that trend line, I don't see why it couldn't try to retest back into the 40s. In terms of earnings, I always seen the like earnings plays. But Fastenal is my dad has worked at Fastenal for a long time. So I've always been in tuned with what Fastenal is doing. Uh, and in terms of as many earnings reports of Fastenal I've looked at, this one was the most one that was in question, not because it was in red, but just because the growth rate that they've been able to sustain over the last few years is starting to show decent little trends that aren't continued double-digit growth or high single-digit growth. If this was one that was going to give you a trend of decreased earnings, I could easily see this trend line giving up. So honestly, this is going to be the out. And if I'm lucky enough to see this pull back into the middle 40s, I'm not even going to worry that, hey, this can give up support to the downside, where you probably have a longer term trend line right there. I'm just going to buy it all the ways down into that support because I feel I'm getting fair value for that. So that's how we're playing Fastenal. I know I don't talk about Fastenal every day, but that is one that we've kept in tune with multiple times. Lucid still holding above 7. That's all I want it to do. Uh, Actually, a nice channel on this 15 minute that is showing you a nice turn to the upside. So if it keeps respecting that, does it put a nice green engulfing candle through? When it has tight channels like this to the downside and the upside, when you get breaks to one way or the other, the positive with a break to the upside is this is sort of your breakout level. Over 725 or over 730 could easily give you a nice pop to the upside, as this trend line is held very nicely. But then also, if it breaks to the downside, you have all of this movement to the upside that it can catch a bid. So if this were to pull back in, let's say to the middle of this move, let's just mark what the middle of this move would be. 709 is your 618, your 702 is right in that range. We'll go off of that. If you pull back in over the next 4 or 5 candles down into that, are you setting a more trend line like this that starts this ascending channel like that up to the breakout level where you can then break that channel for a green engulfing to the upside? So a couple different ways that could be looked at as bullish, but all in all, it needs to happen first. And all in all, with some of the uh, trades that I've made throughout the week, I would say that, my guess is as good as anybody else's. But that is what I would see, and I'm trying to keep everything as unbiased as possible. But this week, in terms of trading, hasn't been the greatest for me. We've done good on some continuation plays, but in terms of some of the newer positions, I'd say this week was a little bit more difficult to find some entries. We were able to find some, but we've also had some losers and some stop out of some longer swings as well. GME was a perfect example of one yesterday. This tells you the story. Out below these wick lows, wasn't able to hold. We only had one out on this green move. We had the entry for this green move. We only had one out, and at the time that was where we thought was a breakout level on our daily chart actually, as you can see at the time this 34 was actually at 2350. Well, as it set a red candle that day, that had moved down. But had it gotten over this level, we looked at this 23 break as something that could have had some weight to it. Where if yesterday didn't end so red, maybe it's a different story, and we're looking at this name pushing higher up into the middle 25s. You can only do so much, and we do think that it's possible that it still is holding a trend line. But how we had it yesterday was more so like this, where you gap up, you try to retrace down to the gap, you make a push, you gap down, buyers come in immediately, and then you kind of trade in this descending channel to the downside like this. Is what the catalyst is. Will do the buyers come back in off this trend line? You break this downtrend, and you're testing up to 27 flat, which 27 has been resistance multiple times. Getting the entry down here off the trend line for a possible move up to upper 20s was what we were saying. So we liked the all the catalysts that we had with it. Or but all in all, there has to be other people. There has to be more shares bought at given levels than sold for those levels to hold. PAG's a nice sideways consolidation. We're still holding that initial entry that we took on this day. And now actually finally going into the green on this position, giving you a positive hold where, this was actually a really good entry. We talked about this neckline sort of break on this green candle, and we said that if it pulled back into this range, we were going to be buyers. Well, now looking pretty bullish, in my opinion, actually giving you a stair step look to go off of here. So I'd say PAGS is really good, and I do want to look back at AI, back underneath of these lows. So, like I said, we thought we had a good catalyst here with AI as well, where it's still holding this sort of trend line, but a lot of times you see that move, you see it give up, and you see it set up a flat top, and if it's able to break over top of that flat top, that is actually enough of a catalyst to push it over top of these highs. I can probably find some examples of that. Uh, but also looking at this as a retracement, pulls into the 702. When I see this, it makes me want to put that trend line in right there. So you can see the catalyst for the ascending channel, where I look at this as a wave 1 pattern. The pullback into the 702 is the wave 2. You get the move up, you retest the highs of wave 1, which is give or take right here, and then you get another leg up. How high can this move? If I was just marking the top end of this channel, meets in sort of near these highs and these lows. So I wouldn't be surprised to see AI over the next couple of weeks make a 50 break push, where over 50 would be your green engulfing candle up to the upper 50s, where you're testing in with this resistance. For all I know, after that it keeps ripping. So to think that we could have just got a early entry off of something on a 39.50 break, obviously this red candle, you're having some short or some selling and some shorts coming in the middle of that red candle. Well, this could still hold this trend line right here, which if you're marking that up also has a ascending channel built in with that. So there's your catalyst right here, give or take like that. I'm sure there's more that you can add in with that, but if this support level held at 38 and this went up and pushed this 44, 44 would be a bigger move for 60. Catalyst up to 60 seems reasonable. Oh, my bad, Drift. I didn't even see that you were back originally. I already had another meeting. Drift is over there putting in the work. That's what we like to see. Forward, we talked about this 13 level, and honestly, this is going to be one that I think we reload. If this comes in to this gap at 1290, 1293 is what we have marked right there. It looks like it closes at 1293, so a good mark there. So maybe the test of 13, we can go on the bid. And I like the catalyst. I thought I did get a chance to look through the forward earnings. I thought forward earnings were good. But if you pull this over, this is also kind of that initial breakout level. So pulling back into where some longs could potentially have gotten in. Nice price movement. Tested up to these top end. Still rejecting some of this area. It looks like it does get through all the retracement. So let's just check and take a look. It looks like we reject the last retracement right there. So a pull back in seems reasonable. And this looks about like the half. We take those lows. It does get through the half, so you can see the catalyst for this gap. So I'm just going to mark this gap. It's 1 penny off, but I'm going to mark it. And these highs right here, in your 702 as backup, average in at 1250. I think it's a reasonable setup, and kind of how I just showed you AI, where it made the initial move. It pulled all the ways back in right to that 702. That 702 meets up right at that 1250. So forward at 1250, I'm going to say I'm a buyer. No questions asked. And I would already be starting to mark this sort of channel if it were something like this. So I do think forward is a reasonable setup. Looking back at AI, does this try to build an inside candle right here? I talked about if it gives up this support level at 39, uh, people are gonna that are in short off of these highs as they false break out of that 39 half, coming back into the gap and got wicked pretty damn close to that. Let's go take a look back at the top movers of the day. Retta, you know, As long as this stayed strong, I never once traded this name. Never once traded this name. We thought about it so many times. Pulled in, gives you the gap up right into the area, gives you a nice move, pulls right back into that area, gaps up, takes out the high, and gives you plenty of opportunity to buy and hold for this gap up right here. So pretty notable move there with Retta. T row giving up the 30s. So continuing to reject that area. I'm glad I took at least a little piece off. For all I know, this were to come all the ways back into the initial gap up. I don't know. But glad that we got a piece out. Talk about setting up a flat top. Look at C limited right here. Actually could be something worth trying. I wouldn't be surprised to see that take that out. We're gonna set an alert on that. Sleep number down 30%. So they reported earnings. I always liked looking at Sleep Numbers earnings because they bought back a ton of shares through all of this. Not good shares, obviously. Uh, but we were really thinking about trying this as it got down near this 15. Gets as low as 1750. Man, that move would have been nice to have. Of course, looking back, that move would be lovely to have. PWM, let's take a look at this. Kind of discrediting the talk of the channel, and we never really seen volume or any price movement to even keep an eye on it. APLS setting new lows. On the 15 today, new lows today. They got their earnings coming up. They're able to put up 70 million. I think that this does end up catching a bid. Just a true trend line break there. So what happens if it shows continuation? We're going to be playing it off of that level at 12 for sure if it gets there. Let's look at top volume again. Mullen. Not ready yet. It's not there yet. When this takes this positive break, I think we're going to try it. Not there yet. Negative 64. But giving you a little bit still of a curl to the downside. Maybe we try it off that 10 level and give it half a penny. FXI continuing a nice move. Baba right at that 100 flat. Looking at the 15-minute, showing you some buying pressure as it gets closer to that 21, but also the middle of this green candle move off the open. Lucid over 720s. Just that nice slow churn, nice ascending channel, tight channel. Disney, nice few green candles there. Gaps up from Thursday to Friday. Retraces down, doesn't have the weakness to fill that gap. So buyers holding it off of this support level. I'd say it's a reasonable, like I'd say this is actually a nut up or shut up candle. You at this given moment, if you're trying to buy this support level down here in the 85s, if this gets back above 86.20, I would say that this could potentially end up breaking this neckline at 72. Reason being, gaps down, it fills that gap on this day, trades all the way back in another support hold. If it gets back over that gap, anybody short off that gap is now out of the money. Where this could be your entry. Your true nut up or shut up is going to be over top of this 87.5, which is these previous lows, which it wick. If it gets over there and actually catches a bid, that is going to be an area. And like I said, that why I said it was not up or shut up. This could be your last moment right here to buy it in these 85s, where I'm sure people are already saying that to themselves and saying, "Hey, let's put some orders in off this flat top right here." Let's actually alert it at 85.90. If that comes back into that, we're gonna watch it live and see how it acts off of that flat top, 3 pennies off. It might not even pull back into there. But all I'm saying is that this sort of look right here, it's a nut up or shut up. You can say, oh, it's going to come back in, but you do not know for sure. You do not know for sure. Very well could. For all I know, I'm blowing smoke right now, and we test back down to this gap at 85.34. All I know is that is a nice support hold, gaps up, and the buyers come in without letting it get to that gap. Where if you were looking to buy this and say, hey, if we get down underneath this, that's going to be our out. So we have the gap fill as protection, and our out is underneath called an 85 break, which is 85.10 is the wick lows here, and now back up right at that 86 level. Just saying. That doesn't mean go out and buy it, but I'm saying to me, I call that the nut up or shut up candle. Foot Locker with a notable move. Here's that nut up or shut up candle. As soon as it takes over this high, retest. Now it's starting to take out these highs even more so. Looking at this, is that's also partially a neckline break as well there. Foot Locker also a nice hold, getting closer to that positive break, but a nice hold of this support, giving you a beautiful U-shaped gap up. Doesn't even pull back whatsoever. Keeps that continuation to the upside. Ooh, excuse me. FVR, we haven't talked about that whatsoever. Yesterday got as low. It did fill that gap on the money. So orders right off that gap. You could have had some orders off of these 27.25 as well, which is neckline break. And like I said, right here, guys, when I talk about the nut up or shut up candle, right here, when you're over that price, you cannot guarantee that this is going to come back in right there. And for all you know, it could have kept ripping from this moment. Fortunate enough, it comes all the way back down, fills that gap. Well, now we got a gap up indecision candle right around this middle ground. That middle, that zero, closer to zero you get, that's where the big players are at, my opinion, of course. Shorts and longs, because that could easily have given you a gap down below that level and continuation back down to 25. Looking at Warner Bros, I can probably take this off. The big picture here is that it's got a wedge pattern. It's respected this to the downside, respected this to the upside. One way is going to give or take. You got the earnings coming up, so keep that in mind on the 3rd. But I think if it breaks to the upside, true catalyst for this 17 gap up here, 1750, right in there. Maybe even mark the lows, which is the wick high up at 1650. I think it's reasonable. Personal opinion. Whew. Baba over 100, giving you some continuation near that 21. Lucid, continuing the top end of this channel, wicking into the top end, but over 725, that quarter level right there. An AI catching a bid, but showing you potentially a descending channel. Look, it could discredit that if it were to break up, where I'd say you're going to have longs looking to punch in off that 39.50. We've already marked 39.50 early in the stream, but you can see that is that area that I think is that middle line in the sand. If you get that entry before that, you know, your catalyst for this shorter term trend line is 44, top end channel up in the upper 50s. So a reasonable setup. Depending on the entry, I'd say this is a reasonable area for a profit take actually. But it does have a nice trend line. You're near the bottom end of the channel, but you can't promise that this is going to hold. So this is why I'd say if you, depending on your entry, if you had entries down here in these 60s, I'd say profit takes in this range, even though you have these previous highs. All it would take, you have earnings on Wednesday and next week. All it would take is the earnings report, gap down below that. After hours, it runs all the way back down into the low 60s, maybe even giving up the lows. We do have a confirmed higher low, but that could be part of the move where this is a wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This could also be a 1, 2, 3 move to the upside, now back testing this sort of flat top here at 75. It could be your wave 4 where you need one more final leg up on a wave 5 pattern up to these lows right here. I guess that's the top of wave 3, where maybe you get a move up into those 80s. But like I said, you have earnings coming up. Potato, potato. Uh, if you're looking at, if you already trimmed some levels up to the upside, I'd say you could, if you wanted to play aggressive, you could play reloads off of that area, which it actually wicked into yesterday. So a nice hold of that area. Well, now if it gives up that level, anybody who bought that level now out of the money off those shares. Holding good strength too. It's positive strength. DocuSign setting up more of this flat top at these upper 54s. Where I'd say you have a nice trend line. You have some good time before the earnings report. If it goes south on you, 43.70 is probably the gap that we're going to come down to. But if it goes north for you, I'd say a test of 67 is all likely. Or if you get over 67, nice confirmed higher low. Where if you're comparing this with IIPR, you see how you have that confirmed higher low, you make that leg up, you test those high, you give one more leg, you trade all the ways back down to the trend line. Now I'd say this is where you're flirting with a more of a legitimate trend line where is it an ascending channel, something like that, couple false breakouts on it, maybe, but also a previous trend line potentially. I don't like the way that's set up. Not clean, need more information. But I do think that this uptrend is potential of something. Looking at oil, flirting with those 80s. Are we going to get a leg up to the upper end of this resistance? Possibly. XELA catching a bid as well. This is actually looking really bullish. Uh, this looks like it's going to be one of those movers that has just multiple green candles to the upside. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, it's light volume here. Like the volume hasn't really been that much, but there's been not that much selling pressure or any short pressure with that as well. When shorts start trying to get in with this, and I'd say up around this 650 to 6 or to 7 range is legitimate. This is where you're going to see some more volume coming in. If you see it start ripping up through that, uh, this could easily catch a bid to the upside. I do want to take a look at Moderna. I do think that this support level right here is something that is enticing. Kind of gives me that forward feel. Where if we just look at that right there, then we go pull up forward. You see that same look? Obviously forward has had an extension price, but you see that sort of same look right there. You see what I'm flipping back and forth on right here? Makes that run hold of this support. So I'd say if you're looking at risk reward, I'd say this is kind of right in line with that Disney, where you have a support level right here on a company that's probably not going away for the long term. Expected a huge uh, loss on earnings here. But all in all, I'd say the high margin and the growth of this company alone could be something worth it. We're probably not the same as Disney. If somebody replaced Moderna, it's possible. I don't think anybody is really going to truly replace Disney. That's my honest opinion. Looking at Lucid, Lucid is a very solid chart setup right here, where this could easily show you some moves, or if this is a wave 1 pattern, and you start building this U shape, test up to this flat top, you could easily see a wave 3 come in where, later on in the future, we're going to be talking about a retest of this flat top right there. But showing you a decent catalyst and the retracement on this move to the upside pulls right in towards that 650, which is your 618 retracement. Pretty decent look. Siga looks like it did give up the level. Pulled right back in. UFAB doesn't look good. Support can still hold right here. If I was patient, this would be the risk reward maybe I could look for right here. Give it a penny and a half to the downside. But we're not going to play it. C Limited still hasn't alerted me right here, but showing a green candle coming on in, it looks like it is going to try to push this flat top. Looking at that daily chart, just look at that. Gaps up, gets damn close to that gap at 59. Not quite a nut up or shut up candle. If it would have pushed higher, that 59.50 was probably getting close to that. Well, then it gaps up. Now it's like, it's tough when it doesn't give you a further pullback towards that. Like even a retest to 60, I'd say retest to 60 is more not a push up. Well, now it pulls back into 60. Now this is that area where you can try it and have orders off that gap. That looks like it got pretty dang close to filling right there. Very close. Chinese ADR, the go-to trade. Man, we were talking about this. This is okay. This is that example I was talking about with AI. Now, bear with me here. Bear with me here. You get the move to the upside. It gives you the move to the upside. It pulls back in, and then it sets this flat top where AI has traded more and tested that flat top. So not the greatest look, but as soon as it gets over that, boom. You got people setting in trend lines and people instantly looking at this as some sort of channel to the upside, just like that. Now I'm going to go look at AI. I'm going to show you that setup. I said I was going to find you one. The go-to setup was that one where you see it makes the move, it gives you a retracement down, and then it sets this flat top. Now obviously it's tested this flat top more. Yes, I understand that. But as soon as it takes that high out, where uh, as soon as it takes this high out, you're going to have people that are looking to punch along for the top end of this channel. Where this one has already made a retrace down and another leg up, so it's a little bit different. But from this moment, or from this moment on, very similar. We're going to go back to that go-to trade. Where this one, same story, gave you the rip up. Retrace back down, gives you a move, retrace, here's where your channel is starting, you test up, you set that flat top, and as soon as you take that flat top out, it's off to the races for top end of the channel. Uh, very similar in its own different ways. Uh, but that is one example of it for you. Lucid catching a bid up at 730. We talked about 730 as this breakout level. Look at this slow churn, tight channel. Buyers continue to just keep stepping in, give or take something like that. Very good move on Lucid, and I have no interest in selling, as this trend line hold right here is pretty legit. If we were looking at this as a channel, I think this has a legitimate case for a move to the top end of the channel where why can't it just run up for that $8? So it hasn't gotten over this yet, so by no means is this out of the clear. This could easily have to pull back into 7 again. But I think it's a reasonable setup. Baba, trying the churn for days high, potentially starting a smaller descending channel right there. But if it pulls back in and your 21 or your 34 meets up, this is the top end of that channel. I haven't adjusted this channel at all. We just had it marked in there, and it pushes that channel, and I didn't even realize that it was respecting the top end of it. Now if it respects that again for another higher low, this 150 to 101 area is going to be a breakout, where our next level we have marked is that 104 to 105 resistance. You can see the catalyst here, and maybe you can probably mark the bodies there. So 103 to 105 could be a potential extension on this. BJDX at the 15-minute, pulled back in, held the level. This would be a nut up or shut up area right there. Why? Because you test those top wicks, you test it, test it. If it reclaims that 8, then that could be an early entry for a potential 810. You could see this turn into a green engulfing candle, and before you know it, it's up here testing these highs. So a nice slow churn on this. Maybe this is a play that we look for, where we have the support down here towards 750. If it comes back in, if I just mark the top of the bodies of these two candles right there, that's 760. If I mark this green candle for a retracement, that's 702, meets in right there. So if I was looking at putting a couple orders in and saying, hey, right in here, we're going to try it. We can try it off as close to 50 as we can and then stops underneath the lows. It's a reasonable trade setup, in my opinion. I don't know if they reported anything with earnings, but definitely a unique setup. But the volume coming in like this, if it started breaking out and this turned into more of a green candle, up here is where your previous low rejects it. Here's a good example of that, where it sets that flat top up, it makes a run, pulls back in, sets the flat top, and as soon as it takes that level out, boom, makes a run for the top end of the channel like this. You guys see what I'm talking about? Where it makes a move, it retraces back in, tries to hold a level, which right here it's holding 8. It sets that flat top up at 10, and as soon as it took 10 right there, boom. Nice run to the top end of the channel, 45% move. I mean, this is obviously different from the AI, but it's all the same setup. It's just taking longer for it to give you that break, and right over 39.50. So had I been patient with this, maybe I would have an entry out this where it makes a move, pulls back in, it sets this flat top up at 42.5, and here was your entry off of the trend line, playing it like that, where as soon as it takes this high, this could be off to the races for top end of the channel, which is upper 50s. One thing that I do not like about this trade, though, is it does have some wick buying, so it shows you not a lot of red engulfing candle. If it was going to break down, it could have easily done so right here. So you got to ask yourself, why is it holding right here? Does this need to catch a bid? I think a truer breakout level is at 810. Or if I look back, let's see if we can find any information. Looks like it puts this red engulfing candle right there and already starts wicking into it. So I'd say some shorts potentially getting in off the break of that 840. Boom. And then here's the retest. I was talking about here's the break. Uh, Shorts taking profit all the way to the downside. This potential reload area off of this level right here, where that's where if that reload starts going out of the money for them, the shorts are going to get a little bit uncomfortable. But you can see on this 5 minute trying to hold this. So is it going to be able to hold that level? Maybe you can run tighter stops based off of that. Definitely trying to build something here. Let's go look over at C Limited. We did get alerted. Let's see if there was any follow through. Not any follow through yet. Let's re-put an alert in off of 70. I'm probably not going to trade that today, but it is an option. Bob, still over 100. 4C, catching a little bit of a bid. Testing that flat top again. Is there any volume coming into this today? Beautiful chart setup though. I mean, this is really giving you the look like we are going to get some sort of gap up. I mean, it's there. It's there right now. Volume is picking up. Does this need to pull back in a little bit? Volume picking up on this current candle. Is there short or is there some profit taking? Not a lot of volume on the day, but all in all, from this consolidation, I mean, a lot of opportunities to buy it off those lows. 14% of the money, this could easily rip. Easily rip. There's your previous lows up to 5. Have some base there at 470 that you can take. Probably something there at the 425s. That could easily start going. Easily. Showing you that small curl right there. This is getting going. There's 8. I'd say there's a nut up or shut up. If you wanted to take it off that 90 break, the wick high. 13 minutes left in this candle, so give it some time. Is how I. If you wanted to just play with some caution, but at this given moment, I'd say this is potentially at a breakout setup right here. Now this could easily wick double top, have to come back into this, but for all you know, it goes ahead and takes out this high at 811. wicking right back in the 790. That's where I would expect possibly some orders to come in off that wick high and a nice hold. 3 pennies on the money you'd be. And then if it pulled back in, that's where you go from your average. $29 on the ask at 8. We're gonna go on the bid here at 792. And that should give us a fill right there. So let's see what this wants to do from here. So we got one fill on the name. Out gonna be 770. I'm out at 770. Gonna run a tight stop on that one. We're just gonna leave it. If I see it come back, we'll just put an alert in at 75s. Into 83s. And there's a 770 stop. Still think it looks good. I still think it looks fairly decent. Lucid, we lost track of Lucid. Testing up to these highs, a couple nice green candles coming in, discrediting the sort of ascending channel we had drawn out right there. Beautiful break, nice hold of 7. This might end up trying to go right here. We're gonna keep on Lucid here. 4C pulled all the way back into that 380 test right there. BGDX, not touching that wick. Nope, not doing it. Don't even care if it pushes 810. Not touching it. Talk about coming on back in. Go EV. Let's take a look at this. Nothing but red to the downside there. Ibit's gonna let me know every single day. Why didn't you start that position down in the 35s? SE crossing over again. Four C back into the level. Lighter volume. Lucid. Still holding a decent candle there. Geo setting up a flat top near this 750. Pullback candle, buyers inside of the green candle. Is it able to get over this level right here? Close to that positive break. Disney. Nut up or shut up. Could have waited for the pullback back in the 85s. I strictly told you that, hey, this may not come back in. This may not come back in. If this gets over 87, call it 87.50 or 88, you can forget about getting it at 85 again. That's what I'll say. I mean, it's still early moves, but that's why we call it a nut up or shut up candle. You either buy it and you risk it coming back in, or you don't buy it and you risk it continuing to the high side. Discover. This is going to be one that we, without question, play in the 90s. But I think that is going to call it for the live stream today. Wasn't able to get anything going on new positions, but mean, what do you do? I had XELA up on the tape. I think this is just going to be one that we keep holding. I don't see a reason to. Maybe we can try and get 650s, but I'd say it's a pretty strong chart setup. Being able to push over this flat top and being able to hold a nice indecision candle on a red day yesterday. Firm is going to be the one where it's kind of got that AI setup where it makes a run, sets up the flat top. If it ends up breaking over top of that, I'm sure you have a pretty notable channel to the upside potentially. JD now up 7%. Lucid up through those 750s, so truly starting to break out here. Getting over the highs from yesterday, so anybody short off yesterday's candle, you can see the volume. I would expect that to be partially some shorts getting out, whether they took the order, trimmed some levels to the downside, tried the reload as we were approaching, and just getting eaten up right now. Does that mean that it doesn't get rejected off of this 775? Maybe it does. But all in all, pretty good move on Lucid right here. Baba's still holding the 100. FXI flirting with that 30. FVR showing some continuation on the 15. Man, that gap fell. Where's that gap at? Pretty much on the money. C limited wicking through that sort of breakout level. Yeah, like I said, we're probably not going to play that one. 4C pulling all the ways back in, red engulfing through the previous level. Don't like it. Probably ends up breaking the all-time high. Crocs. Nut up or shut up candle as it takes that high. Kind of that same look as Disney. Well, now pulling back in, wicking towards that. So, I mean, if you were looking for a weaker name, not entirely weak, but at a support level, kind of. Does it need to retrace up into the teens? Maybe. I'm being patient with this one. I'm not touching it. Hey, at least there was no big loss. Yeah, didn't take any big losses today, but we have some big gains today, Drift. That I'll just keep between you and me because I think you're the only one watching, but we have some big gainers today. And I'd say Lucid, we truly have some size on Lucid. So I'm excited to see that really starting to break out. Respecting this level. If I'm right about this and we're able to print this up near 10, I will be one happy camper trimming this. So expect to see Lucid on every title for the next couple weeks. And disclosure between you and me, some of these Chinese ADRs, we are long and we are not even thinking about selling. I think my target is somewhere at the start of this 150 to 161 where we're going to start taking our 5-10% and probably, if we're lucky, run this up to 200 as target price there. FXI, you know, same story. Once I start trimming Baba, I'm going to start trimming all these names down. I'd say 35 to 37's target. 10 cent. 10 cent breaking through this. I mean, we've got some prints actually in the mid 20s. Respected some levels, actually reloaded off some gaps here. I believe the 42 gap, and we were on the bid at 36 thinking that, hey, there's a chance that we can get there. Weren't able to get there, but now breaking this descending channel, I'd say you got some clear resistance up near these mid 50s, but top end of the channel 67. JD, this position is starting to show good signs, but If this were to get up to 52 is where we're looking to start off of that gap. So good to see some Chinese ADRs, and of course we had the T row was a nice gap up, took a nice print today, coming back in, but that keeps it a strong day. I'd say the bigger hit that we took today, that was bigger than all the trades that we just took, was end phase. You know, we've talked about end phase a lot. And the earnings, I honestly thought that there was some good positives, obviously some negatives with the forecast. But I'm long on this name. I have no interest in selling, and you know, there's still possibility that we have this channel set incorrectly before we had it set where we're running it through these lows. I still think it's possible that in this channel, we're not going to be buying any today, but if it were to show some exhaustion and give me the opportunity, I didn't have the chance to go pre-market or after hours off this gap. I should have. I wasn't thinking. But after hours, the low in after hours was 138. So I could have really been off that 141 gap, which is what I've talked about before. When we had this channel set like this, we said, hey, our downside risk is that 141 gap short term. If it gives up this in any way, shape, or form, 141, watch for it. So we'll think about this. If this wants to give up the lows here and give some sort of red engulfing candle down to 141, we're going to think about it there. What else? We haven't really taken too much off of any oil plays. And then the Affirm. The Affirm kind of hurt. Getting stopped out on Affirm and looking at it back here, it's like, man, we had the beautiful 14 entry. We made a tough decision yesterday to set the stop loss underneath the wick lows. And, you know, sometimes that's part of the trading. So all in all, when we had the ads up here in towards the 17s, we had the right idea. We believed. Reloading some of those profit takes that we had up in the 19s. We actually had a 1912 print on it in that same exact day, and we tried buying some more back. We reloaded it off the level. Actually, it was off the gap, so we reloaded 1770. We put the stop in, ended up getting stopped out, so gave back some wins, but yeah, to see it back up over 1750 kind of hurts a little bit, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, you have to have an out and understand that, you know, if more people were willing to buy right here after hours or pre-market or whatever the case, then that was the case. And if I wanted to run a true deep stop, you know, run a stop underneath 16 would have been the play, and I would be sitting there saying, "Ooh, man, I wouldn't be sweating as much," you know. So I mean, there's a thousand different ways of looking at it. And this morning, honestly, my top play coming into the day was Roku. Had the flat top set up. I could be $6 in the money on this position right here, 7%. So that one kind of hurts. But this was the earnings that I was keeping on watch as it was showing these green candle moves. Here's the nut upper shut up candle. Taking out that neckline, full green engulfing candle, nut upper shut up. You pull right back in. You fill the gap right before the earnings. It's at the close, slightly above that gap. Look at that. You can't tell me. You can't tell me that this wasn't going to be a good earnings report. We were going to gap up and boom. So Roku, pretty significant move on Roku. But Lucid, I mean, I shouldn't say that this is going to be a home run trade for us because, you know, it hasn't even set a close on the day. We still have 4 hours left. But just some of the trades this week, trying to get under my skin a little bit. You know, that's part of it. That's part of it. It's my job to take what happens and try to get better from it, and go from there. And for all I know, this is the top for Baba, and we don't even get close to 150s, and I'm bag holding it down here back into the 80s for all I know. But I do think that this is going to be one of my longer term plays, and I'm looking for some price action to get up there. You know, when it, you know, I say that I'm waiting for 150s, but if it starts wicking into this 118 gap near this top end resistance, you can see the catalyst for the top up here. Honestly, if it got over 130s, though, I think it's a pretty strong name catalyst to push for that 161 gap, and that's what we're looking for. But yeah, that is gonna call it for the stream. I keep hearing my headset beep. Oh, I forgot about Intel. Intel was a nice gapper today. Haven't looked at their earnings yet, but we're gonna be waiting for 39.66. And if we're able to get some price movement higher, I'd say up to 44 is flat bottom break. So anytime I see that flat bottom break, the retest of that area, I'm sure there's also a gap in that range right there off of 43.50. So that is going to be the plan. Respect top end of the channel. If I'm lucky enough to get that move up there, we're going to take advantage of it. But that's going to call it for the day. I appreciate you tuning in, Drift. Wish I could bring some better content for you today. Just wasn't able to get it done. So we'll come back next week. I go on vacation. I leave Monday evening, so we'll get the trade one last day before I go on vacation. And that will be for a full week. I'll be back the following Tuesday. So I'll have some time off from streaming, but I'll touch base with you on that on Monday. So I'll catch you later. Yep, you have a good weekend too, Drift.